Hi, everyone. My name is Jonna Gottschalk, and I am the assistant curator at Museum of Art. I am also the curator of the new exhibit called Go West, Said a Little Voice, Baumann and Dreams of New Mexico. So there's a contemporary component to the show that kind of contextualizes the continuing cultures that Baumann was a part of or inspired by. And today we have two artists here with us. Jason Garcia is from Santa Clara Pueblo, and Vicente Telles is a contemporary santero. So one of his pieces is up in the exhibit, and we'll be showing that. So I'm just going to have the guys come in and introduce themselves because it will be better in their words. All right, well, I'm driving the PowerPoint, so you're here.
Okay, sounds good. I'll see the gallery view. So,
well, just let me know when you want me to switch slides and take it away. Introduce yourselves. I'm going to switch to your PowerPoint, Jason.
All righty, sounds good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Museum of New Mexico listeners and viewers, and good afternoon. My name is Jason Garcia, and currently we're here in Santa Fe. Vicente and I decided to join together so we can bring you maybe an easier conversation. But my name is Jason Garcia. I am also go by the name Okupin, which is my traditional Tewa name, and I'm from the Pueblo of Santa Clara, which is located about 30 miles north of Santa Fe. We can go to the next slide. And the next slide has it's the Sandia Mountains, which is Okupin, which is Turtle Mountain. So that's the one of our 4 sacred traditional mountains within the Tewa world. And that's what I'm named for. So you can see the outline of the turtle. Okay, next. And Santa Clara Pueblo, the traditional Tewa name is Kapo Owinge, which means Rose Path Village. And it's one of 6 Tewa-speaking pueblos located within New Mexico. And then there's also one on First Mesa on the Hopi Reservation. And they were part of a group that were located south of Santa Fe, or south of Santa Ogap Oge Owinge is the traditional Tewa name for Santa Fe. And they were located out in the Galisteo Basin, and they moved out to Arizona in the 1700s, but they're still maintaining a cultural connection with the Tewa people of New Mexico. Next slide. And this is Buje Owinkeji, is the traditional ancestral place that the people from Santa Clara Pueblo come from, along with some of the other Tewa, modern day Tewa villages as well. And this is Buje, means where rabbits gather. And it's up on the Pajarito Plateau. And I'm pretty sure, I think there's still tours offered, but I'm not too sure exactly if they still do because of COVID restrictions. Next slide. And then this is Kapo Owinge, which is Santa Clara Pueblo. And Santa Clara was established maybe like 1400s or so after our ancestors moved down from the Pajarito Plateau. And it's still modern Pueblo village. We celebrate our feast day on August 12th of each year. And then we also, which is our patron saint is St. Clare of Assisi. And then we also have another feast day on June 13th, which is St. Anthony de Padua. Okay, next slide. These are some examples of Santa Clara Pueblo pottery. This is what you would call, quote unquote, the traditional ware of Santa Clara, the fired oxidized reduction process of the black pottery, and then the deeply carved pottery with the avanyu, the water serpent, and then also with the bear paw on the top. the bowl and then the water wedding base. And then the 3 pots on the bottom are melon pots. And all of this is created with traditional hand processed clay that's gathered in and around Santa Clara Pueblo. And then it's painted with an iron oxide paint and then polished to get that really high burnished surface. And then it's traditionally fired outdoors. Next slide. And then these are a couple other examples of pottery of Santa Clara. The top is a sgraffito process. So after the pottery has been fired, then the design is etched with a metal point into the surface of the pottery. And the 3 pots on top are my parents, Goldenrod, and my father, John Garcia. And then on the other 2 are polychrome, which is using various mineral pigments to get the colors, different various colors of the pottery. And then that's painted before it's fired. And then after it's been, when it's fires, the pigment often goes chemical change. So then the colors also change as well too. Next slide. And so the polychrome is more quote unquote traditional. It actually precedes the highly polished pottery. That's more 1800s is when it kind of came out of.
So can I just
Sure.
pause real quick and interject? You keep saying quote unquote traditional, and I think I would like to hear a little bit more about that.
So quote unquote traditional would be, that's a good, yeah. So there's traditional and contemporary, and oftentimes museums, galleries want what is traditional, where it's traditional processes means hand form, hand processed clay. It's not store bought. The pigments aren't store bought. The firing isn't in a outdoor or an electrical kiln or a gas kiln. It's used with firing like a pit fire or a raised box firing. So that's how I always use the quote unquote, because oftentimes museums and collectors want quote unquote traditional pottery. so I always use the quotes because again, where someone says tradition, quote unquote traditional Santa Clara Pueblo pottery is the highly carved black pottery, but in reality it isn't. The polychrome precedes the traditional, again, the black pottery. So and then you see the polychrome and people are like, wow, that's a modern innovation.
Right.
No, it isn't. It precedes it by thousands of years. So yeah.
Well, you have to kind of conform to what the market's asking you, I guess.
You can, and I don't think you necessarily have to either. So
yeah. I mean, if you want to make money, if you want to sell it, if that's your goal.
Yeah. So my work is influenced by our cultural traditions. The two pictures of 2 dances at Santa Clara Pueblo, the corn dance that's danced on August 12th of our feast day. And then on the bottom is a deer dance from the 1950s or so. Animal dances that's usually danced in the wintertime. The next slide. And so I like to say that my work is documenting the ever-changing cultural landscape of Santa Clara Pueblo. And so a lot of the work comes from my own observations of feast day dances, pop culture, and then also some other work relates to Tewa historical events as well too. And so this is a Corn Maiden series that I had started around 2005 or so. And we can go to the next slide. And so it's just the Corn Maiden in their environments using signature elements like the rain cloud, and then also technology, cell phones, TV antennas, TV satellite, And that also refers to the patronage of St. Clare of Assisi, who's the patron saint of the blind embroiderer, Santa Clara Pueblo, and then also the patron saint of television. So I like to add those various symbols in the work as well too. We can go to the next slide.
I'm just going to interject again. I know that I've seen a lot of your work, and you always include this rain cloud
Right.
in almost all your work. And I don't know if you can speak a little bit more on that.
Sure, no
Is that
problem.
like
So,
a signature in your
yeah,
mind, or?
yeah. So the rain cloud is in a sense almost signature element that's referencing ancestral traditions, ancestral iconography. Again, the quote unquote traditional icons of the past. And so I typically use it in almost all of my work. And in some ways, people have said, "Oh, they're using your cloud," but it's not my cloud. It belongs to entire pueblos and tribes and villages. So it's just tying, making that connection, because you see the corn maiden with a cell phone, and maybe being that that's a contemporary image, and then seeing the rain cloud is tying to the ancestral past. We can go next slide. And then again, the rain cloud, symbols of television, the young dancer. And then also sometimes in this piece, it's called The New Hope. So the title is also referencing Star Wars and the influence of pop culture on my own upbringing and learning different stories, the stories of Luke Skywalker. And you think of the hero story, and then how it relates to our own Tewa historical stories, migration stories, creation stories as well too. So that's what some of those titles reference. They also reference songs that I listen to as I work, or musicians, different genres of music. Can do next slide. And then I also make pottery. This one's untitled, but it's actually a Four Seasons pot. So, going from on the screen, going from left to right is springtime with a young lady with the apple blossoms falling around her. And then the next one is summer, and she's kind of cooling her feet in a stream. And then the autumn is a young woman where she's picking piñons. And then the winter is the woman that's touching the evergreen tree. So it's kind of relating to the various seasons and dress, and the snow around them, and then different animals, and then the cloud design that's in the pot as well too. The next slide. And then this is a body of work that I've been working on for about since 2007, and it's a Tewa Tales of Suspense, which uses Tewa historical events like the Pueblo Revolt. I've done some on the migration of the Tewa people out to Hopi, the colonization of New Mexico, conversion, and it's been a long ongoing series, and I've had several exhibitions surrounding this work. Most of the work is usually depicted in clay tiles, pottery. I've done printmaking as well, serigraph prints. I had you can go to the next slide. And I also had a exhibition that was a result of my Master of Fine Arts work at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and it was brought out to the Old Museum. And that was 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. 2017 is when we had it. And so just creating this in different mediums, and then also the work is more almost like cover based, comic book cover, but I do have a work in progress of the Tewa Tales of Suspense that I'm working on, then actual comic book. We can go next slide. And so a lot of these are from stories that maybe people don't necessarily know about, or showing the truth of various events. After the Pueblo Revolt, Oñate returned in 1692, And there's always the wording of quote unquote the bloodless reconquest of New Mexico. That's a lot of advertising they do, but it wasn't bloodless when they returned. The Tewa people and the other Pueblo people just didn't willingly hand over Santa Fe, Olga, to the Spanish. There were still revolts and revolutions that still occurred, and one of the main ones. I'm sorry, I said Oñate. It's actually de Vargas in 1692. And de Vargas, there was a siege at Black Mesa, which is between San Ildefonso and Santa Clara Pueblos, and various Tewa Pueblos sought refuge on top of Black Mesa. And Don de Vargas had tried to attack the Mesa several times, but was unsuccessful during that time. So, this piece is relating to that. And then also working with various Pueblo archaeologists, Tewa archaeologists from San Ildefonso. Dr. Joseph Woody Aguilar has done work up there at Black Mesa. So, working with him and looking at the sites and then relating it in the work is part of the research that goes into each piece as well too. We can go next slide. And I believe this is the last slide that I have. And this is just showing the seriograph, the silkscreen work that I've done as well with the Tewa Tales of Suspense and other works as well too. I think that is the last slide, and we can move on to Vicente. I know time's the thing too.
All right, thank you so much.
Everybody.
Thanks, Jason. And we'll come back obviously and talk to you some more. So Vicente, I'm going to switch. You have a few slides here. So just to clarify, this is the piece that's in the exhibit that Vicente did. So I'm just going to go ahead to the next slide unless you want to say something.
No. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Vicente Telles, born, raised in Albuquerque. I'm I create santos now, some on the more contemporary side and some on the quote unquote traditional side. But
I was hoping we'd get to the quote unquote traditional.
But
we'll come back. We can come back to that though.
Sounds good. So I guess we could do the next slide. So with the santos, I've been, I think about them often and think of how they might have influenced those who were first creating them, what imagery they were using, and what these images were used to convey to the community that they're trying to, speak to. So for me,
Vicente, I'm sorry, but can you just give the briefest history of this kind of work? I know you're very well versed in it, and I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
The brief history as far as creation materials. Well, so the santos, were created where, there was a void of proper religious art, I guess you would say, art not made in the centers of, Zacatecas, Puebla, Mexico City. As far as, how they're made now or how they were made then was, the idea of using gypsum, burnt gypsum, animal hide glue, mineral pigments. So kind of, that's, I guess, some of the traditional aspects of what the santos are, retablos. Back then, probably on hand ads boards, ponderosa. So going from there, the idea of taking that traditional idea of materials, for me, thinking about the santos, I think of them as like kind of propaganda, what the stories are trying to sell, what they're trying to, who are they trying to convert, who are they trying to, talk to. So this is an image of the Christ of the Nopal, I call it, with, migrants now coming up from, south of this idea of what the border is, and where the father and daughter drowned. So this is my idea of, them reaching out to, be saved. But with, the society and climate we're in now, the lack of empathy in a lot of, religions, is kind of speaking to them. How do I use the idea of the Savior to help those who need to be saved or protected? So that's kind of the idea of this piece is, talking to, having this talk to those who view this piece as having empathy, considering their fellow man and any border. So that's what that piece speaks to. If we can go to the next one. And this piece is, retablos, are traditionally flat panel. Then you go into, the bultos, which are carved 3D. And then there's the idea of taking, for me, taking the flat panel and putting it into something that can be put on a shelf or put into kind of like a little sanctuary, a nicho, and have it to where it takes up a space that, is oftentimes where a traditional retablo wouldn't be put, an altar, this is an altar to, again, Christ and the mourning of his mother and father. But it's how do I use the imagery and use these techniques in a way that I'm speaking to myself as wanting to create. How do I want to use my vision and, tradition that's been around for, in this parts for, a couple hundred years? How do I lend my voice to talk in this kind of art form and, give homage, but also, bring who I am to this, art form. If there's a next slide. And this one is, this one's kind of a funny story. I was watching a documentary on the Van Eyck kind of altar they have there, and they had the panels removed, but instead they had like the black and white where these panels should be. And I saw that, and it reminded me, it was of Adam and Eve, but it's also the idea of telling the story of, creation, like who were these first people who, gave birth to, some would say, humanity. But it's also doing like Jay research, like seeing different images, seeing how they play into, my everyday life and how I'm influenced. And the image in the middle of Adam and Eve and Christ in the tree was from a colonial painting from Mexico that I saw. So, it's a part of, the Flemish on the outsides, and you have, colonial Mexico in the middle. But what binds them together is the use of these materials and the idea of the tradition on the panels and pigments. And, so it's how do we interpret what we see in a quote unquote traditional way, while, considering, I feel like, the idea of tradition for me is those who were creating made conscious decisions on how they wanted to have their line work received, how they wanted to have their color palette looked at, how they wanted to have their, what they wanted to abstract, what they wanted to pay more attention to, what kind of scale they wanted to show in these pieces and the importance of the pieces. So for me, tradition is the ability to use your mind in a contemporary way with the materials you have at hand. So I think, that is the way I view what I believe the Santo and Retablo tradition is. And it's something that I hold in, my opinion, but that's where I think for me is the beauty in the tradition. And when I speak of to the abstraction, you have on your left-hand side Moyeno, who in my mind is able to break down, the human form, and also, the by line weight, line thickness. He gives you what you need to read. As a contemporary of that time when Moyano was painting, they understood exactly who this was without having to see it in a realistic form. You could tell by the way he abstracted the skull, the hands, everything about it. The line weight's heavier on the left-hand side of his face to show that dimension of a turned head. So for me, I view this a lot, more as recently as a very, very early abstract artist creating here in New Mexico. So there's things that as I began paint, or from when I began painting, I looked at it as, what were these guys doing? Why weren't they able to, paint a little more realistic? But as I'm continuing my journey in this, I began to see the importance of having, having the ability to choose and omit or create a style with the idea of, these guys weren't creating out of the void. They have material knowledge from the indigenous tribes that are already here. So, a lot of the idea of this being a pure, some people call it Spanish art form, I think is incorrect. I think a lot of the material knowledge is from our brothers and our neighbors here that were in New Mexico. So that's kind of, thinking about that has had me on a different journey with the Santos, and it's been one that's been an interesting ride so far.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of conversations on this topic, what it means to have traditional art versus what quote unquote tradition means, and how do you stretch those limits and still remain within the same art form. This piece, we had seen a bunch of Vicente's work that's a little bit more contemporary, but you do also work in a more traditional style, and this piece right here is a great example of that. And that with that composition of the central figure, off not on the left hand side one, but usually it incorporates that curtain. The saint is very distinguishable. You can tell by what it's holding, how he's dressed, and so you kind of straddle that line where you really look into both of those.
Yeah, and correct. I think there's, yes, but I think there's also, a bunch of other santeros are doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. But I think what really opened my eyes to a lot of the, I would say, kind of board forms and kind of decoration was when I was working with Jay, and I was just watching him do a mural at the Nativo Lodge, and just asking him about him explaining like the tail feathers of the turkey and all these different kind of things, and kind of re-examining through the old Santos, like that influence kind of was really interesting to me, because it's always portrayed as it's just one particular group of people with no outside influence. But I don't find that, as I'm doing this, don't find that to be true, or I think it's doing a disservice to the art form as a whole.
Yeah. So so also within that grouping with Vicente's work and that older piece, we have it next to Baumann's print, his kind of lesser known work. He did a suite of Santos, and so we have this kind of side by side, this conversation of what Baumann was seeing then and how those quote unquote traditions are being held up. So you can see in Vicente's work next to this piece, he would have been looking at a retablo, and he would have been using that same composition and that same idea.
Yeah, I think that particular piece is that Baumann was looking at as off a hide. So you could kind of see like how he's trying to get the folds and the unevenness of the hide of St. Francis.
Yeah, yeah, good eye. So now I will just say you are probably wondering why I brought these two together. And that is because they have been working collaboratively. And I think it's produced some really interesting things, and it creates a lot of conversation. And so just to start off, I'd like you guys to kind of speak on what inspired this collaboration and where you were seeing this overlap that you wanted to examine.
You want to go?
Sure. So I think I think the first time that we met was 2017, I believe, something like that. Or no, excuse me, it was 2015. Axel Contemporary Gallery, or Mobile Gallery here in town. They had a show. I forgot what the title of the show was, but Vicente and I were part of that show. And so that was like our first exhibition together. And I went away to grad school the following day, came back to New Mexico after I finished school. There was I forgot what the bar was called. It's currently the Boxcar. I forgot what it was, Junction or something like that. And so his cousin was playing music, and you happened to be there. I think you were still living in San Diego at that time. Okay. And so we had ran into each other at Boxcar, and so had started talking. And then the second time was Santa Fe, the Spanish Market in 2018. So, we had just started talking, had lunch or had dinner together at the shed following the market. And, since then just been talking about doing some collaboration work. And then in, what was it, last year, 2020, we were approached by Axel Contemporary again if they wanted to do a collaboration. So we said, sure. We started a meeting. I think our meeting was like in end of January, I believe, for a show that was to open at Spanish Market. And then Axel was planned to be at Santa Clara Feast Day, and then also close at Indian Market weekend. And then COVID happened. We had our one initial meeting.
Let me interject quickly. Sure. In that Matthew from Axel is here, and he shared the link to that exhibit in the chat if you're curious.
Okay, fantastic. Greetings, Matthew and Jerry. Thanks. Hello. And so COVID happened, but we had already started our conversation about what type of work would we do. And Vicente started working on pieces for a gallery show at Hecho a Mano, here again in town, Santa Fe. And so he had a piece that he was working on, and we said, well, let's do something since you got the time. Indian Market was canceled. COVID pretty much canceled everything for us. So we said, well, let's go ahead and start working on the piece. Vicente created the actual wood piece, carved out everything. We kind of talked over the phone and through text messages and all of that, and figured out how he was going to do the piece that slides out on the top of the cloud, and then that shell, the conch, and then with a little Malinche, we kind of, I think, decided that like our joining, our connection was the Matachinas dance, Malinche. So we kind of figured, well, let's do a Santa Clara version, because Santa Clara Pueblo typically dances the Matachinas dance on Christmas Day. And it's a little bit different, or quite different from the, I guess you would say, this is Hispanic version in various villages of northern New Mexico. But then also, they're also very similar as well too. So we kind of figured out, drew some sketches, figured out what was going to happen. I drove down to Albuquerque, picked up the piece, And then it was just a blank slate. And the only thing we were working with was, our theme was Malinche Matachinas. We knew we were going to put her in the center and then do the reverse, the flip of the dance. And
can you quickly explain structurally how it happens?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I can move down if you want to look.
So yeah, so the little piece, the Malinche piece, there's a little switch, I guess you would say, where so it's the oval piece, or I don't know what you would call that, the round piece of Malinche that she's in. It's actually it almost looks like a paleta, a popsicle, and that piece that she's on slides in, and it has a little switch that you can pull out that holds it, and then you can pull it out, and then you can reverse it and then flip her back in. So that piece is reversible. And then the two side pieces with the cloud, the blue cloud design, the blue cloud step or kiva steps, or those slide into the piece, and then they slide out, and then you can flip them and then drop them back in. So you can create, what is that, 36? I think there's 12 variations, or however you can slip them in and out. And so the middle figure has the Malinche from Santa Clara, and then the other side has Malinche from Bernalillo, I guess. That's San Lorenzo feast day on August 10th, celebrated in Bernalillo. And then on the two reverse sides is the Santa Clara, the Monanca, the king, along with the toro, the bull, and then the dancer, and also has a signature rain cloud, I think, on all of the pieces except the Malinche, although she's got it on her dress, on her manta, embroidered manta. So when you pull that, the flip side, on the back side are the musicians for the Hispanic version with the violin, guitar player, and then on the other reverse is the chorus, the four men with drums of the Santa Clara version, and then on the opposite side is the two dancers, and then the abuelo also with the red cape.
And for me, I think this piece also kind of speaks to how me and Jay met, with the idea of, music and dance. And I think, before we've collaborated, I think we've shared more meals and music than we have, talking about our art. So it's kind of speaking to that as well. And, there's a little shout out to my buddy Tim Lucero, who's also Santero and also a Matachin dancer. He's the guy in the blue, down there in the blue. He's the guy far right on our screen. So with, talking to Tim and watching him dance, it's kind of, the idea of bringing the communities we belong to, as much as it is a piece talking about tonight, it's also very community to us. You have the violin and guitar players playing in the Resolana. So it's kind of, the idea, and also even that with the idea of Malinche, how, our stories also come from, Mexico or vice versa.
Right. Can I ask a quick question here too? Yes. Is how, so we have two stories of Malinche, but how different are they? I'm assuming the viewpoints for each of you is, I'm sure it's a different story. Am I wrong there? I'm wondering how similar these two situations are.
Yeah, I mean, when you study the history of the Matachines dance, it's like the battle of good over evil, the bull representation of the evil, and the Malinche being the light, I guess, in that sense. Mm-hmm. And then also with the king and the soldiers, where they're defeating evil, which is the story of good over bad, or Christianity defeating the devil. And I think that's part of the dance. And then also in terms of the Santa Clara version, or the songs are sung in Tewa, and they're representations of used representations of clouds forming. And then also they mention Poseyemu, who's the also Montezuma, so it mentions that. And you know, in that sense, there's the connection of it's referring to Montezuma I and not necessarily Montezuma II, who met Coronado and was defeated essentially. And then also the relationship between Montezuma and Malinche as well too. And then also being that it's dance at Christmas, you know, it's a Christian holiday. And I think so there's those connections there. And then Malinche being the little Indian, you know, the Indian girl, she's the only little Indian girl that's that's a participant in the dance. And then also in terms of, you know, the honor and recognition that the young lady receives, and gifts given while she's dancing, and, you know, just kind of that place of honor, and, you know, that the little girl is chosen to dance. And then the same thing in the Hispanic communities as well too, of just that of being a place of honor. Or maybe it doesn't necessarily have the negative historical connection that, you know, the original Malinche has. It's more more positive in that sense.
And for me, like, if you notice the actual construction of the piece, a lot of it, you know, has to do with, you know, what are recognizable to both of us on, you know, in design alone. So which is cool. Like, you have the step, you have the carved rosette. How do we combine these to have it be, you know, where it's, you know, can be recognizable to both sides without, you know, without claiming its own space. Like, they live together, and, you know, they're going to live together in space. So how do we, you know, combine something that, regardless of what side you put it on, is going to talk to each other? So like Jay said, I gave him all the blank woodwork and said, have at it. So it's like, he was working to the woodwork, but I was also after working to Jay's paintings. So it's kind of that give and take, like, all right, this is what you did. Now it's my turn. Now this is what you did. Now so we're having a conversation with each other without having, you know, being able to be in space with each other while doing it.
Yeah, so someone just brought up, as you were mentioning, that Malinche is kind of a controversial figure, or the stories are conflicting often. Someone just mentioned that they are having an exhibit all about Malinche in Denver, which actually Vicente has a piece in.
Yes.
So that's something to examine that a little more.
Yes.
So I think you kind of, sorry, go ahead.
And I think too, her having the center, you know, being the centerpiece is also, you know, a conscious decision too. Like, instead of, you know, our women are important in our communities, and I think that they don't get put on center stage enough, especially someone like Malinche. I think it depends on who you ask, if she's controversial or not. But right. I think what we're trying to do is show her as something more than this controversial figure. She's living, she's a part of who we are. She's a part of our story now. And, you know, the reason why we made it on a 90-degree angle, so you're supposed to be able to walk around and engage in the piece on all levels before, you know, while being able to look at her head on. Like, if you're coming from you know, what side, you're going to engage with the musical aspect of communities. The community, you're going to be able to engage in the dance, you're going to be able to engage in, like, you know, it's a piece meant to be viewed on one hand, you know, on its own, where, you know, you have the musicians and this, and then the drummers, but then it's also the community as a whole. When you face it head on, it's like, what we try to do is, like, you know, what Jay's work, you know, the Tewa tells us suspense, and what I do, like, I appreciate what Jay's doing, because these are histories that we need to be faced head on. Can't sugarcoat a lot of this stuff anymore. It doesn't do anybody who lives here, has been from here, any kind of service to create these divisions amongst each other anymore. It's like, these are our stories, good, bad, and the ugly. Like, let's tell it.
And there are conversations that need to be happening now. They should have
Yes.
been happening yesterday.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I need to
I think-
interject really
I think
quick.
they do, but they're not on the level where we're having this conversations on
Right,
a base like this. Yeah.
right. I mean, in a more public
Yeah.
setting, perhaps. I just need to amend about the Malinche show. It will actually be traveling to Albuquerque as well. And I think that's a 2020 summer.
That will be 2021 June.
No, well, this is 2021.
Or 2022. I'm sorry. 2022 June.
And then I saw in the chat that there was somebody asked what the title of the piece is. So the title is La Malinche y los Matachines. So again, we're just kind of playing on the pop culture aspect of Selena y los Dinos. So we're just kind of playing on that. So.
Well, it's interesting because I think you've kind of described this project in like a very perfect COVID collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Were you guys finding difficulty working during COVID? Just kind of as a side note, not the collaboration. It seemed like you guys had that kind of down.
Yeah, for myself, we still kind of do have we have a lockdown or a curfew rather. The Pueblo of Santa Clara was closed, I believe in mid-March or so. So we had a curfew of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So, that's kind of was difficult getting around that. And then also since the village is closed to non-residents, Vicente wasn't able to come in to visit.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would go, it would be during, leave early enough to get down to Albuquerque to pick up the pieces and then be back in time before the gates are closed to get back to Santa Clara, back to my studio. Worked on the piece for, I think maybe it was a month or so, somewhere around there. I think I picked it up in July and delivered it maybe late August or so. And
I think late July because I had to have it done by August.
Okay, yeah. So it was about a month. Usually send pictures through text or maybe like a voice audio message of this is what I was thinking about, and completed my sides of my 3 sides, the 3 figures, and then did all of the solid colors of the pieces, delivered it to Albuquerque, and then from there it was Vicente's job to do the 3 panels, the 3 interchangeable panels, and then he also went back in and then touched in the solid color line works that I did, and made it more quote unquote Vicente Telles signature elements.
What you can see behind the images when you remove them is blue and green Pendleton, and that's also kind of an homage to both. The idea of clothes as well. Like, one of the drummers has a Pendleton, and I made sure one of the men on my end had a Pendleton too. So
so it has that protective backing as you slide in the piece, and then it's on the back of the piece. The way as you slide it out, it has that green Pendleton that I believe is your grandfather's, right?
It was just
okay. We'll say it was your grandfather's. For
all intents and purposes for this story, it was my grandfather's gifted down.
Exactly. and then even in the sense of the drummer, he's wearing his hair in braids and his hair is white, and so that's how my great grandfather wore his hair. So it kind of just also referencing, our past, and then again with the participation of the dance, I danced it. My son, my dad, my grandfathers my grandmother was the Malinche at one time. This is probably 1915s ish, somewhere in there, and so there's also that family history and connection to the Matachines dance as well too. I mean, the personal history as well, personal connection. I mean, it's a great piece. I had a lot of fun collaborating, and I know going back to Axel. Axel had approached us and said, okay, as COVID is kind of chilling.
Quote unquote chilling.
Yeah, quote unquote chilling. The numbers are going down, decreasing. Do you want to have the show and we'll do it the same time period, Spanish market to Indian market? But as far as our prep time and collaboration time, it was just too soon. I think we had like 3 months ish, maybe, if that. And I think it was, it was probably March or April was when we got the notice, when Santa Fe Indian Market had said that they were going to do in person along with Spanish market. But we didn't feel that was enough time for both of us. So we just said, we'll just do it next year, 2022. So that's what we got right now. So we're even talking about what type of work that we'll be doing. We'll probably, hopefully, this piece may be in it. It may not, and then also maybe creating some serigraph prints based on this image, along with some other things as well too. I think we might have enough time for the battery, or we just got to notice that the battery's dying. But if it dies, we'll just go to cell phone. So
okay, well, we can wrap it up too. It's not a big deal. I really enjoy the conversation that this piece is having, and I think it caught my eye pretty quickly. And do you plan to do more collaborative work like this?
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we were talking about doing some, how they have like the little Malinche of doing like a Santo type bulto piece with, our personal saints that we're connected to, one being Saint Clare of Assisi. My birthday is also on Santo Domingo, Saint Dominic's feast day. So maybe trying to figure out some work like that. I actually created a series of Franciscan saints on clay tiles. I did Saint Clare, Saint Francis, Saint Pasquale, and then I did another piece that was the Franciscan priests that were killed in the Pueblo Revolt as well. So there's also that connection as well too, of creating something like that. Maybe we can even do like a Pueblo Revolt piece, or there's different variations. And
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that a lot.
Spanish market, I know, have done kind of Pueblo Revolt themed pieces from the perspective of the Hispanic or the Christian Catholic side too. So that might be something that we may do as well too.
I think as long as we're in community with each other, I consider this a lifelong collaboration, and not only art, but also, ideas, information, truths, all that stuff. So I think it's open-ended till who knows when. So,
well, all right. Well, as we're wrapping up, if anyone has any questions, they want to put that in the Q&A, and then just while we're waiting on that, do y'all have any shows coming up or anything you want to talk about?
I think we're tentatively going to be doing one with in December with Hojo.
Oh yeah, the Gallery Hojo over there at Hotel Chaco. I believe is December-ish. We'll have to talk with. We haven't gotten like the final notification from the gallery and all of that. So that's one. And then collaborating on ideas, and then start creating work for the Axle in 2022. Opening Spanish market, hopefully traveling to Santa Clara Pueblo, and then also closing with Spanish Santa Fe Indian Market, but then also being in different venues. I'm sure we'll probably have other shows during that time that'll be happening, or other events, or where it's open really.
Fingers crossed, hopefully on the Albuquerque leg of the Malinche show.
Right.
This piece will make
that might be something to talk to with Axel, of having them parked out there at the museum during the Malinche show as well too. Or at least I don't know how that times overlap and all that. What else? I just got the application for the Heard Museum show yesterday, so we'll be applying for that. The invitation was sent out yesterday, so working on the acceptance letter and all that. So that'll be first weekend of March 2022, which is planned to be in person as well.
So there's a question about, do you feel, and we kind of touched on this, but do you feel that COVID actually enhanced this collaboration, or did it make it harder? How do you feel about that role of it?
I don't know. Like it.
I guess my question is, do you think your process is going to change now that COVID is quote unquote under control?
Well, no, I'm still not able to
That's right. Yeah.
work with Jay in his space, but I think what it did do is it cleared off, usually working for Spanish market, it's, my time creatively picking up from April, end of March, all the way to the end of July. And I think as Jay overlaps with it with Indian market, like this cleared that space for us to concentrate on, being able to create,
of course,
free of the idea of the weight of the markets.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I don't see any other questions. Do you have anything to add before we close out here?
Yeah, I don't know if it enhanced it or it was just your workaround problem. I think we've all had to navigate all of that over the past year and a half of of closures, of changes in schedules, cancellations, postponements. So I wouldn't say it made it harder. It just made it, challenging, but we overcame it. So
definitely. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you both so much for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all do in the future. I think it's going to be some great stuff. So keep us posted. We'll do this again sometime.
And I would like to say thank you for those of our respective communities who are listening in, and those who weren't able to make it because of, the work day. Hopefully, in the future, we'll be able to, have, access to those who, want to hear us speak, that, this is a time that's, a little difficult, but, for those who are able to listen to us talk, it's greatly appreciated. And this is also giving more fire in the belly.
Like we said, these are conversations we need to have, and it's really nice to hear you guys talk about it. And this is being recorded, so it will be up on YouTube, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. And please share it.
Yeah, I couldn't see who all the participants were all in here, but thank you all for coming, listening to us, joining us, all that. Shout out to my fellow Badger, Lee Garcia, and hey Sam Dixon, how you doing? Axel, I see Pope in there.
Mr. Jaramillo, Alicia, thank you guys.
Thank you all.
Good crowd out there. My sister who likes to comment on everything.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you, sister. Sister doesn't have a name. Thank you, sister.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.
All right.
Stay safe,
thanks so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.